The smell of garlic and fresh basil filled my nostrils as I stood in the kitchen of my flagship restaurant, watching my team prepare for another busy Saturday night. My name is Isaac, I'm 32 years old, and I own 7 restaurants across New York City. But if you'd told me 10 years ago that I'd be here, that I'd build something this successful from nothing, I wouldn't have believed you. Not because I lacked ambition, God knows I had plenty of that, but because the people who were supposed to believe in me the most, my own family, had convinced me I was destined for failure. I still remember the exact moment everything changed. It was Thanksgiving, 6 years ago. I was 26, working as a server at an upscale steakhouse in Manhattan while secretly planning my first restaurant. I'd saved every penny, worked double shifts, studied business plans until my eyes burned. But to my family, I was just Isaac the waiter, Isaac the disappointment. My older brother Marcus was a doctor, my sister Elena was a corporate lawyer, and then there was me, the black sheep who dropped out of college to pursue what my father called a teenage fantasy. That Thanksgiving, I made the mistake of thinking things might be different. I just secured a small business loan, found the perfect location for my first restaurant. I was excited, hopeful even, as I drove to my parents' house in Connecticut. The moment I walked through the door, my mother's face fell. "Oh, Isaac," she said, looking at my work uniform I hadn't had time to change out of. "You came straight from work?" The way she said work made it sound like I'd been cleaning sewers. My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. Marcus smirked from the couch, his medical degree practically glowing on the wall behind him like a halo. The dinner table was set with the good china, the kind my mother only brought out for important occasions. As we sat down, Elena launched into a story about her latest court victory, and Marcus talked about his research getting published in some medical journal. When the conversation finally turned to me, my mother's voice took on that pitying tone I'd grown to hate. "Isaac's still at that restaurant," she announced to the table, as if delivering news of a terminal diagnosis. "Still waiting tables." Actually, I started my heart racing with the news I'd been dying to share. "I have something to tell you all. I'm opening my own—" "You know," my father interrupted, finally looking at me for the first time that evening. "The Johnson's son just got promoted to regional manager at his company, started in the mailroom, worked his way up. That's what real ambition looks like." The words I'd practiced in the car died in my throat. My mother nodded along, adding, "Maybe if you'd finished college like we asked, you wouldn't be serving other people their food right now." That night changed everything. As my family continued their discussion about real careers and respectable professions, I sat there in silence, my announcement about the restaurant loan burning a hole in my chest. Elena's husband, Richard, who worked in investment banking, decided to pile on. "You know, Isaac," he said, cutting into his turkey with surgical precision, "there's no shame in service work, but at your age, shouldn't you be thinking about management at least? Even fast food chains promote from within." The condescension dripped from every word. My nephew, Marcus's 8-year-old son, piped up innocently, "Uncle Isaac, why don't you have a real job like Daddy?" The table went quiet for a moment, and I saw my brother trying to hide his smirk behind his wineglass. My mother rushed to fill the silence. "Well, sweetie, Uncle Isaac is finding himself. Finding myself. At 26, after years of 18-hour days, burns on my arms from hot plates, feet that ached so badly I could barely stand some nights, I was just finding myself." "I should go," I said, standing up abruptly. My untouched plate of food stared back at me mockingly. "Oh, come on," Marcus finally spoke. "Don't be so sensitive. We're just concerned about your future." "Concerned?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "When have any of you ever been concerned? When I was working 3 jobs to pay for culinary school? When I was sleeping in my car because I was saving every dollar for my dream?" "Your dream," my father scoffed. "Dreams don't pay mortgages, son. Dreams don't build retirement funds." "John, please," my mother tried to intervene, but he continued. "No, Margaret, he needs to hear this. We spent thousands on his education, and he threw it away to play chef. Now he's a waiter. Server," I corrected automatically. "Whatever you want to call it, you're still bringing people their food and cleaning up after them. Is that the legacy you want? Is that what you want people to remember about you?" I looked around the table at their faces, my successful brother, my accomplished sister, their perfect spouses, their future inheriting children. And then there was me. The cautionary tale they'd tell at dinner parties. "This is why we pushed you kids so hard," they'd say. "We didn't want you to end up like Isaac." That night, I drove back to the city in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. But something had crystallized in that moment. Their doubt, their dismissal, their complete lack of faith in me. It wasn't going to break me. It was going to fuel me. 3 months later, I opened Isaac's Table, my first restaurant, in a small space in Brooklyn. I didn't tell my family. I didn't invite them to the opening. I just put my head down and worked. The first year was brutal. I was chef, manager, accountant, and janitor all rolled into one. Some nights after closing, I'd sit in the empty dining room surrounded by stacks of bills, wondering if my family had been right all along. But every morning, I got up and did it again. I refined recipes, trained staff, built relationships with suppliers. Slowly, word spread. Food bloggers started showing up, then critics. 6 months after opening, we got our first major review, 3 stars from the New York Times. "Isaac's Table isn't just a restaurant," the review read. "It's a testament to what happens when raw talent meets unwavering determination." I photocopied that review and kept it in my wallet, not to show my family they didn't even know the restaurant existed, but to remind myself on the hard days that I was building something real. The success of Isaac's Table led to opportunities I'd never imagined. Investors started calling, Food Network wanted to feature us, a massive space in Manhattan became available, and suddenly, I was signing a lease for my second location. On my 28th birthday, I had 3 restaurants and a James Beard nomination. It was around this time that my family found out, not because I told them, but because Elena's colleague had eaten at my Manhattan location and couldn't stop raving about it. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of interviewing executive chefs when my mother's number appeared on my screen. I let it go to voicemail. "Isaac," her message began, "Elena tells us you own some restaurants now. Why didn't you say anything? Call me back." I didn't call back, but the calls kept coming, from my mother, my father, Marcus, Elena. Suddenly, the family that had written me off was very interested in reconnecting. The messages evolved from confusion to frustration to anger. "It's incredibly selfish of you to keep this from us," Elena texted. "We're your family." Family. The word felt hollow coming from them. Finally, after 3 weeks of dodging calls, I agreed to meet them for dinner. Not at one of my restaurants. I wasn't ready for that, but at a neutral location. They chose Le Bernardin, one of the city's most expensive restaurants, naturally assuming I'd pay. When I arrived, they were already seated, studying the menu with the intensity of scholars examining ancient texts. My mother looked up first, and I saw her take in my appearance, the tailored suit, the watch I'd bought myself after the 3rd restaurant opened, the confidence that success brings. "Isaac," she said, standing to hug me, "you look different." "Successful, you mean," Marcus said, not bothering to stand. "So, 3 restaurants? That's quite the secret to keep." I sat down, ordered a water, and waited. I knew what was coming. "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother asked, her voice a mixture of hurt and indignation. "We could have helped. We could have invested." "Invested?" I almost choked on my water. 6 years ago, you couldn't even invest a congratulations when I tried to tell you about my business loan. "That's not fair," Elena interjected. "We were just being realistic. The restaurant industry has an incredibly high failure rate. 80% fail within 5 years, Marcus added, as if reciting from a medical journal. "We were trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I set down my glass carefully, trying to control the anger building in my chest. "You humiliated me. You made me feel like I was worth less than everyone at that table because I was a server. Because I chose a path you didn't understand." My father, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. "Well, you've obviously done well for yourself. 3 restaurants is impressive. What are they worth? What's your annual revenue?" And there it was, the real reason for this dinner. Not to apologize, not to congratulate, but to assess my value now that I had proven myself worthy of their attention. "That's none of your business," I said flatly. The table went quiet. The waiter approached, but my father waved him away. "None of our business?" My mother's voice rose slightly. "Isaac, we're your parents. Your success is our success." "No," I said, standing up. "My success is mine. I built it without your support, without your belief, without your respect. You don't get to claim it now that it's convenient." "Sit down," my father commanded. "You're making a scene." "I'm leaving," I replied, "and just so we're clear, you're picking up your own check." As I walked toward the exit, Elena called after me. "Isaac, don't be childish. We're trying to make amends." I turned back one last time. "No, you're trying to rewrite history. There's a difference." That night, I went to my flagship restaurant and worked the line with my staff until 3 in the morning. The familiar rhythm of the kitchen, the heat, the controlled chaos, it reminded me who I really was. Not the failure my family had seen, but a chef, a businessman, a success story they'd never bothered to read. The calls started again the next day, but now they had a different tone. My mother left tearful voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart. Marcus sent texts calling me ungrateful. Elena emailed me articles about forgiveness and family reconciliation. But the most interesting message came from my father. It was short, just 2 lines. "You want to act like you don't have a family? Fine. Don't come crawling back when your little restaurants fail." Little restaurants. Even now, even after everything, I was still small in his eyes. 2 years passed without contact. During that time, my empire grew. I opened 2 more locations, launched a cookbook that hit the New York Times bestseller list, and was featured on the cover of Food and Wine magazine. My 7th restaurant, a fine dining establishment in Tribeca, earned a Michelin star within 6 months of opening. I was in my office above the Tribeca location, reviewing plans for a potential Las Vegas expansion, when my assistant knocked on the door. "Isaac, there's a woman downstairs claiming to be your mother. Should I send her up?" My stomach clenched. After 2 years of silence, she'd tracked me down. "Give me 5 minutes, then send her up." When my mother walked in, I was struck by how much older she looked. Her usually perfect hair showed gray roots, and there were lines around her eyes I didn't remember. "This is beautiful," she said, looking around my office with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "You've done well." "What do you want, Mom?" She sat down uninvited, placing her purse carefully on her lap. "Your father's sick. Heart problems. The medical bills are substantial." I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. There it was, the real reason for this visit. "Marcus is a doctor," I said. "Elena's a lawyer married to an investment banker. I'm sure between them, Marcus has his own family to support, medical school loans. Elena and Richard are going through a divorce. It's messy, expensive. And so you come to the failure, the waiter. Don't be cruel, Isaac." "Cruel?" I laughed bitterly. "Do you want to know what's cruel? It's working 18-hour days and having your family be ashamed of you. It's achieving everything you dreamed of and having no one to share it with because the people who should have been cheering you on were too busy looking down on you." "We were wrong," she said quietly. "Is that what you want to hear? We were wrong about you." "No," I said, pulling out my checkbook. "What I wanted to hear was, we're proud of you when I was 26 and scared and working myself to death." What I wanted was support when I had nothing, not apologies when I have everything. I wrote a check and slid it across the desk. Her eyes widened at the amount. "This is a one-time gift," I said. "Not for you or Dad, but for the parents you used to be, before you decided I wasn't worth believing in. After this, we're done." She took the check with shaking hands. "Isaac, please, we're family." No, I said, standing up to signal the meeting was over. Family shows up when you're struggling, not just when you're successful. Family believes in you, even when the path isn't clear. You're strangers who happen to share my DNA. After she left, I sat in my office for hours, staring at the city lights. The check I'd written was substantial enough to cover any medical bills, and then some. But it felt like closure, like paying off a debt I didn't actually owe, but needed to settle for my own peace of mind. The next few months were a whirlwind of growth. The Las Vegas deal went through, and I found myself flying between coasts, managing construction, hiring staff, creating menus that would work for a different market. It was exhausting, but exhilarating. Every success felt like another step away from that Thanksgiving dinner, another proof that they'd been wrong. On the night of the Vegas opening, surrounded by celebrities, food critics, and investors, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find Marcus standing there in an expensive suit, holding a champagne glass. "Impressive party," he said, as if we'd just spoken yesterday instead of 2 years ago. "How did you?" "It's been all over social media. Isaac Chen opens his first West Coast location. You're using Mom's maiden name now?" I had legally changed it the year before. Goldberg was my father's name, and I didn't want to carry it anymore. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" "I was at a medical conference in Vegas. Thought I'd stop by." He paused, taking a sip of champagne. "Thank you for what you did for Dad. The money." "Mom told you?" "She told everyone." Elena was furious. "You didn't split it 3 ways, but..." He shrugged. "It wasn't our money to claim." We stood there awkwardly, 2 strangers who'd once shared a bedroom, who'd once built pillow forts and told ghost stories. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked suddenly, cutting us off. "Do you ever regret making me feel like I had to?" He didn't answer, just finished his champagne and set the glass on a passing tray. "I should go," he said. "Congratulations on all this." As he walked away, I wanted to call after him, to try to bridge the gap between us. But the words wouldn't come. Too much had been said and unsaid over the years. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The Vegas restaurant was an immediate success. Within a month, we were booked solid for 3 months out. Food Network offered me my own show. Publishers wanted another cookbook. The kid who'd been mocked for being a server was now being called one of America's most innovative restaurateurs. But success, I learned, doesn't fill the empty spaces. Late at night, in hotel rooms or my empty apartment, I'd sometimes wonder what it would have been like to call my mother and share the good news, to have my father's approval, to celebrate with siblings who were genuinely happy for me. It was my 32nd birthday when everything came to a head. I'd planned a quiet evening, just me and a few close friends from the industry at my flagship restaurant. But when I arrived, I found my entire family waiting in the private dining room. "Surprise," my mother said weakly, clearly sensing my shock wasn't the happy kind. "What is this?" "We wanted to celebrate with you," Elena said, her divorce apparently final, judging by the missing wedding ring. "It's been too long, Isaac." 4 years, I said. "It's been 4 years since that dinner at Le Bernardin." "Water under the bridge," my father said, looking healthier than I'd expected. "We're here now." I looked at the table set with my restaurant's finest china, the menu I'd carefully crafted displayed in gold lettering. My staff stood awkwardly by the door, unsure whether to serve or flee. "Did you make a reservation?" I asked. "We're family," my mother said, as if that explained everything. "Answer the question. Did you make a reservation, or did you just show up expecting special treatment?" The silence told me everything. "Give me a moment," I told my staff, then turned to my family. "You need to leave." "Isaac," Elena protested. "We're trying to make amends. We want to be part of your life." "Now you do. Now that I'm on television, now that I'm in magazines, now that being related to me is something to brag about at your country club." "That's not fair," my father said, his face reddening. "Isn't it? Where were you when I was sleeping in my car? Where were you when I couldn't afford to eat anything but the mistakes from the kitchen I worked in? Where were you when I was nobody? We didn't know." "Because you didn't care to know," the words exploded out of me. "I tried to tell you, that Thanksgiving, about my loan, about my plans. You cut me off to tell me about the Johnson's son and his regional manager position." My mother started crying. "We made mistakes. Parents make mistakes." "Mistakes?" I laughed, but it was hollow. "A mistake is forgetting a birthday or missing a recital. You made me feel worthless. You made me believe I was a failure before I even had a chance to try. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." "So what?" Marcus interjected. "You're going to hold this grudge forever? You're going to die alone and bitter because we didn't applaud your career choice?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm going to live surrounded by people who saw my value when I had nothing to offer but my dreams. People who believed in me when believing wasn't easy or convenient." I gestured to my staff, some of whom had been with me since the beginning. "These people are my family." They stood by me, worked impossible hours, believed in the vision when it was just sketches on napkins and recipes scribbled on receipt paper. "You're really going to choose them over us?" Elena asked, incredulous. "I'm not choosing anyone over anyone. You removed yourselves from my life when you decided I wasn't worthy of your respect. I'm just honoring that decision." My father stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "If you kick us out now, we're done. No more chances, no more reaching out. You'll be dead to us." "Dad," I said, and saw him flinch at the word. "I've been dead to you since I dropped out of college. The only thing that changed is now I have a pulse you can't ignore." "Fine," he said, grabbing his coat. "When you end up alone, when these restaurants fail, when you realize what you've thrown away, don't come looking for us." "John," my mother pleaded. But he was already heading for the door. "Let him go," Marcus said, following. "He wants to be the victim, let him." Elena lingered for a moment. "I hope this makes you happy, Isaac. I hope your restaurants keep you warm at night." After they left, I stood in the empty dining room, my heart pounding. My sous chef, Jamie, who'd been with me for 5 years, approached cautiously. "You okay, boss?" "Yeah," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "Yeah, I am." That night, after service, my entire staff surprised me with a real birthday celebration. A cake they'd made after hours, terrible singing, inside jokes, and stories about disasters we'd survived together. As I looked around at their faces, people who'd chosen to build something with me, who'd believed in the vision when it was barely a dream, I realized something profound. Family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up when showing up is hard. It's about who believes in you when you barely believe in yourself. It's about who celebrates your victories and cushions your defeats without keeping score. The next morning, I had a lawyer draft a letter, making it clear that any further contact from my biological family would be considered harassment. It felt final in a way that was both heartbreaking and liberating. Months passed, the empire continued to grow. An 8th restaurant in Chicago, a 9th in Miami. Each opening was covered by major media, each success another vindication. But I'd stopped needing the vindication. I'd stopped trying to prove anything to anyone but myself. One day, while reviewing applications for a scholarship program I'd started for aspiring chefs from underprivileged backgrounds, I came across a letter that stopped me cold. It was from my nephew, Marcus's son, now 14. "Dear Uncle Isaac," the letter read, "you probably don't remember me, but I remember you. I remember asking why you didn't have a real job when I was 8. I'm sorry about that. My dad told me you were a failure, but I've been watching your show and reading about your restaurants. You're not a failure. You're amazing. I want to be a chef. My parents are furious, but I don't care. I've been working at a local restaurant after school, saving money for culinary school. They say I'm throwing my life away, just like you did. I hope so, because if throwing my life away means building something incredible, then I want to throw it as far as I can. I know you don't talk to the family anymore. I understand why, but I was hoping maybe you could give me some advice. How did you do it? How did you keep going when everyone said you were wrong? Daniel." I read the letter 3 times, each time feeling a different emotion. Anger at my brother for poisoning another generation. Pride that this kid had seen through the lies. Sadness that history was repeating itself. I wrote back immediately, "Daniel, I remember you, and I forgive you for that question you were 8 and repeating what you'd been taught. Here's my advice. The people who tell you your dreams are worthless are usually the ones who gave up on their own. Your parents' anger isn't about your choices, it's about their fear. Fear that you'll fail, but more importantly, fear that you'll succeed and prove that their way isn't the only way. Work harder than everyone else, but not to prove them wrong, to prove yourself right. Learn everything. From everyone. The dishwasher, who's been there 20 years, knows things the executive chef doesn't. Listen more than you talk. Taste everything. Fail often and fail fast, but learn from every mistake. And when you make it, not if, when, don't go back for their approval. It won't feel the way you think it will. Build your own family from the people who believe in your dreams, not those who try to edit them. If you're serious about this path, I'll pay for your culinary school, not as your uncle, but as someone who believes in investing in dreamers. Your parents don't need to know. This is between you and your future. Stay hungry, literally and figuratively. Isaac." I included a check and a list of the best culinary schools in the country. 2 weeks later, I got another letter, tear-stained and grateful. Daniel had been accepted to the Culinary Institute of America. His parents had kicked him out when they found out, but he'd been ready. He'd saved enough from his restaurant job to get a small apartment. I hired him as an intern at my New York flagship for the summer before school started. Watching him work was like looking at a younger version of myself, the same hunger, the same desperation to prove himself, the same joy when he nailed a difficult technique. On his last day before leaving for school, he asked me something that had clearly been weighing on him. "Do you regret it, cutting them off?" I thought about lying, giving him the easy answer, but he deserved truth. "I regret that it was necessary," I said. "I regret that they couldn't see past their own limitations to support their children's dreams. But I don't regret choosing myself. I don't regret building this life on my own terms." 5 years have passed since that birthday confrontation. My restaurant group has expanded internationally: London, Tokyo, Paris. The kid who was mocked for being a server now employs thousands of people, has fed millions, and has built something that will outlast any medical practice or law firm. Daniel graduated at the top of his class and now runs the kitchen at my Chicago location. He's brilliant, innovative, and kind, everything his father isn't. He hasn't spoken to his parents in 3 years, a choice he made on his own. Sometimes I see the sadness in his eyes, the same sadness I carried for years, and I want to tell him it gets easier. But that would be a lie. It doesn't get easier, you just get stronger. Last month, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a photo album, pictures of me as a child, at family gatherings, graduating high school. There was a note in my mother's handwriting. "I thought you should have these. Despite everything, these moments were real. We did love you, just not the way you needed. I'm sorry for that." I kept the album but didn't respond. Some wounds are too deep for words to heal. Recently, a journalist doing a profile asked me about my family, about the persistent rumors of our estrangement. I told them the truth, that family is a choice, not an obligation, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. The article came out yesterday. This morning, I woke up to hundreds of messages from people sharing their own stories of choosing themselves over toxic family expectations. Parents who'd disowned children for being artists, siblings who'd mocked entrepreneurs, grandparents who'd withdrawn love because of career choices. As I stood in my flagship restaurant this morning, watching my team prep for service, I realized something profound. Every person working here had chosen this life, despite someone telling them it wasn't enough. We were all refugees from other people's expectations, building something beautiful from our collective refusal to be small. My hostess approached with the reservation list for tonight. "Isaac, there's a problem. A party of 4 insists they have a standing reservation, but they're not in the system. The name is Goldberg. My birth name. My family name. The name I'd left behind. They don't have a reservation, I said quietly. They're being quite insistent. They say they're your... I know who they are. They still don't have a reservation. She nodded and walked away. 10 minutes later, she returned. They left this for you. It was an envelope with my father's handwriting. Inside, a single paragraph. Your mother has cancer, stage 4. She wanted to see your restaurants before. She wanted to see what you built. We'll pay like any other customers. We just want an hour, please. I stood there, holding the letter, feeling the weight of every decision that had brought me to this moment. The anger was still there, calcified over years of rejection. But underneath it, something else, not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the possibility of grace. I walked to the host stand myself. They were standing outside, looking older, smaller somehow. My mother, gaunt from treatment, wearing a wig that didn't quite match her original hair color. My father supporting her arm, his pride visibly battling his desperation. Marcus and Elena, uncomfortable in the shadows of their parents. Table for 4? I asked professionally. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Yes, please. I seated them myself, handed them menus, and explained the specials with the same courtesy I'd show any guests. As I turned to leave, my mother touched my arm. The food smells amazing, she said softly. Thank you, I replied. Nothing more. I didn't join them, I didn't forgive them, but I fed them. I gave them the best service, the best food, the best evening I could provide. Because that's what I do. I nourish people, even those who once starved me of approval. When they finished, my father asked for the check. I had the server tell them it had been taken care of, not by Isaac, their son, but by the house. A professional courtesy, nothing more. As they left, my mother turned back one last time. Our eyes met across the dining room, 32 years of history compressed into a single glance. She mouthed, "Thank you," and I nodded. Then they were gone. I don't know if I'll ever see them again. I don't know if her cancer will give us time to find some kind of peace, or if this was our goodbye. What I do know is that I built something beautiful without their approval, and I'll continue building long after they're gone. My name is Isaac Chen, formerly Goldberg. I own 12 restaurants across 3 continents. I employ thousands and feed millions. I am successful by any measure that matters. But most importantly, I am free. Free from the need for validation from people who couldn't see my worth. Free to define family on my own terms. Free to choose love over blood, respect over relation, and dreams over duty. Tonight, like every night, I'll cook. Not for them, not in spite of them, but for myself and the family I chose. And that, more than any Michelin star or rave review, is my greatest achievement. The question isn't whether I'll forgive them. The question is whether it matters anymore. I've built a life so full, so rich, so completely my own, that their absence isn't a hole. It's just space for more of what I've chosen. And that's enough. More than enough. It's everything.